My child, if you open this, it means I did not allow you to miss this moment. I held back many times before, not because I had nothing to say. Not because I did not see what was happening around you. And certainly not because I had forgotten the cries you released when no one else could hear them. I held back because there are moments when silence must complete its work before my voice enters with full force. There are seasons when I watch quietly, allowing your heart to move through places it would never understand if I interrupted too soon. But today is not one of those silent moments. Today I am speaking because what stands before you cannot remain untouched any longer. And what I am about to place in your spirit cannot be delayed another hour. The next few moments are heavier than you realize because they stand at the edge of something that has already begun moving in the unseen. You think you came here by a simple choice, by an ordinary pause in your day, by a passing curiosity. But I tell you clearly, I directed your eyes here because I knew this exact second would arrive. And I knew that if I did not stop you now, you would continue carrying thoughts, fears, and burdens that I am no longer allowing to rule over your next season. I have watched you. I watch how you tried to remain strong even when strength felt borrowed. How you kept your voice calm while your heart carried questions too deep for words. How you smiled for others while privately asking why certain doors stayed closed, why certain answers never came, why some battles repeated even after prayer. I heard every one of those hidden questions. I did not turn away when you whispered them into the dark. I was there when you sat in silence after disappointment, when you replayed conversations in your mind, when you wondered if what you hoped for had already passed you by. I was there when your own thoughts became louder than peace, when the night fell long, when morning came, but your heart still carried yesterday's heaviness. And because I was there, I also know that what is happening now cannot be treated like another ordinary word. This is why I did not allow you to miss this moment. Stop everything and listen carefully, because this is not another reminder, not another gentle passing comfort that you hear and forget by tomorrow. This is the moment my silence ends in a way that will reach places inside you that even you have avoided touching. There are things standing in front of you that have stood there longer than you admit. There are inner walls you learned to live beside, hidden fears you disguised as wisdom, delays you began to call normal because facing them directly felt exhausting. The what I speak now will begin breaking what has stood against you for longer than you understand. You saw only the visible side of the struggle, but I saw how deeply it reached. I saw the hesitation that entered after disappointment. I saw how certain words spoken by others stayed longer in your spirit than they should have. I saw how betrayal made you careful, how unanswered waiting made you guarded, how repeated effort without visible change slowly taught you to expect less than what I had spoken over you. Yet even while you adjusted yourself to survive, I never changed what I planned. My promise did not shrink because your strength felt smaller. My hand did not withdraw because your confidence became uncertain. I waited because timing matters when truth enters a weary heart. Had I spoken this too early, you would have heard it through fear. Had I spoken this too soon, you would have measured it through pain. But now you are at a point where even your exhaustion has prepared you to listen differently. That is why my silence ends here. You are not supposed to ignore this message because I brought you here while something unseen is already pressing against the wall in front of you. What you call delay has not been empty. Pressure has been building where you could not see it. What looked unmoved has already begun to weaken. The wall in front of you is about to crack. But before it does, you must understand why I waited until now to speak like this. I waited because if the wall broke before your heart understood what comes next, you would misread the shift and step into it with the same fear that built the wall in the first place. I waited because breaking alone is not enough if understanding does not rise with it. Some walls were built by pain, some by disappointment, some by repeated caution, some by the memory of what happened when you trusted too quickly, hoped too deeply, or gave too much. You built some walls quietly, not with the intention to resist me, but with the instinct to protect what had already been wounded. And because I know why they were built, I also know why they cannot remain. What protected you for one season is now limiting what I need to release in another. I am not only cracking what is outside you, I am reaching what hardened inside you while you learned how to endure. I have watched you struggle behind closed doors. Others saw parts of you, but they did not see the whole weight. They did not see the thoughts you carry after conversations ended. The heaviness that followed you into quiet rooms, to private moments when you questioned your direction, your worth, your timing, even your ability to continue with the same hope you once carried more easily. I saw the moments when you became tired of explaining yourself, tired of pretending certain things no longer hurt, tired of asking why some answers remained hidden while others around you seemed to move ahead. I saw how you learned to carry burdens quietly because speaking about them often changed nothing. But now I am commanding your attention because what I release today will move faster than your fear, faster than your doubts, and faster than the voices that tried to bury you under discouragement. Those voices were never stronger than my authority, but I allowed you to hear them long enough to recognize which voice truly gives life. To voices that said you missed a moment, that said your best days were behind you, that said nothing would change, that said silence meant abandonment, those voices were never mine. And now I am speaking over them with clarity so that what rises next does not rise under confusion. God is my constant help. If He lifted you out of darkness and despair, read this carefully, because many hear my voice, but very few understand when I say this is the final warning before everything changes. Final does not mean I abandon mercy. Final means I am no longer speaking in half measures to areas where hesitation has already stayed too long. Final means what has lingered must now answer to movement. Final means what you kept postponing inside yourself can no longer remain postponed if you expect peace to return fully. I am speaking directly because there are choices before you. Attitudes still hidden, attachments still alive, fears still dressed as caution, and if they remain untouched, they will interfere with what is already beginning to unfold. I do not speak like this to frighten you. I speak like this because I love you enough not to let you drift into the next chapter carrying what belongs to an old season. Many wait for dramatic signs while ignoring the clear instruction already placed before them. But I tell you, clarity has already come more times than you admit. What you called confusion was often hesitation. What you called uncertainty was often the discomfort of knowing what must change, or delaying it because the familiar felt easier than the unknown. The silence that surrounded you was never absence, it was restraint. I restrained words because I was allowing truth to mature in you. I restrained intervention because certain things had to reveal themselves fully before you could see them without illusion. I restrained immediate answers because quick relief would have hidden deeper issues that needed to surface. The restraint is over now, and I am entering places you thought would remain untouched. The hidden corners, where old disappointment still speaks, the quiet places where trust became thin, the guarded places where you promised yourself never to expect too much again. I am entering all of them. I am not entering to condemn you. I am entering because healing cannot stay outside what still hurts inside. I am entering because peace cannot remain shallow while deeper unrest stays protected. I am entering because if I leave those places untouched, you will continue calling survival peace when I intended freedom. Your next breath is connected to this moment more than you know. Not because everything changes in one instant, but because understanding begins in moments that seem small before they become visible in life. If you stay until the end, you will understand why I refused to let you scroll away, why I interrupted your movement, why I placed weight on these words, why something inside you already feels is differently than ordinary comfort. You sensed for some time that something was nearing, though you could not name it. You felt moments when old patterns suddenly felt heavier, when old thinking no longer fit, when familiar distractions stopped working the same way. That was not random, that was preparation. I was already shifting your inner ground before speaking clearly, and now I tell you this. What comes next must meet a heart that is listening, not escaping, trusting, not retreating, yielding, not delaying. Because once movement begins openly, you will remember this exact moment and understand that before anything changed around you, I first came for the places within you that had been waiting longer than you admitted. My child, this moment is not ordinary, and before you move past these words, you must understand that I am the one who arranged this interruption with exact purpose. I did not allow your eyes to rest here by chance. Nor did I permit this moment to arrive as a passing thought that would disappear like countless things you have seen before. I am claiming this instant because too much has already been building beneath the surface of your life for me to remain silent any longer. I know how often you have continued through your days while hiding what others never noticed. I know how many times you smiled while carrying questions that remained unanswered inside you. I know how often you told yourself to endure one more day, one more disappointment, one more delay, one more night of wondering whether what you hoped for would ever truly move. But hear me clearly now, this interruption is intentional because I have watched the weight increase, and I know the exact point where silence can no longer serve what I am preparing to do in you. This is not a random word crossing your path. It is not a familiar comfort repeated again. It is not another gentle reminder like those that reached before and quietly passed through your thoughts. I am speaking now because something inside you has reached a place where ordinary words are no longer enough. I am entering this moment with clarity because what is ahead requires that you hear me without distraction, without delay, and without treating this as if it belongs among the many things you can simply return to later. I am telling you directly, this message could not be delayed any longer because the condition of your spirit, your thoughts, your exhaustion, and your hidden questions have all arrived at a point that heaven has been watching carefully. I held back long enough. You must hear that with full understanding because my silence was never absence, and my restraint was never neglect. I held back, not because I did not know what you needed, but because there are truths that cannot enter fully until the heart has reached a place where it can no longer hide behind familiar defenses. Rare words would have reached you, but they would not have settled as deeply because parts of you are still holding tightly to explanations, patterns, and expectations that needed to wear thin before my voice could enter with full force. I watched while you tried to interpret the delays. I watched while you searched for reasons, while you questioned timing, while you wondered if certain closed doors meant rejection, if certain silences meant distance, if certain struggles meant you had somehow missed what I once promised. The what you call delay was often preparation taking place where your eyes could not yet follow. I held back because your spirit was still moving through places that required exposure. Some attachments had to reveal their weakness. Some hidden fears had to show themselves clearly. Some habits of thought had to become visible enough for you to recognize that what you called caution was often fear wearing the language of wisdom. I allowed time because what needed to rise inside you could not be forced. Yet now the process has reached its moment. Now I speak because silence has completed what it needed to do, and what comes next requires clarity stronger than comfort. This message is not like previous moments, when you sensed my nearness gently and then returned to the same patterns by the end of the day. This is not another passing touch meant only to soothe temporary heaviness. This moment carries weight because heaven has waited for this exact spiritual condition before speaking with this kind of urgency. You may not understand how closely I have watched the inner changes happening in you, even when you yourself could not name them. You noticed tiredness, but I saw deeper than tiredness. You noticed frustration, but I saw deeper than frustration. I saw the point where old explanations stopped satisfying you. I saw the point where distractions lost their power to numb what remained unsettled. I saw the point where your own inner silence began asking questions louder than words. That is why heaven waited. Not because heaven was uncertain, but because the soul of your spirit had to become ready to receive what could not simply be heard, but must be carried. There are moments when truth spoken too early becomes another phrase remembered briefly and then forgotten. But now your inner life has reached a place where what I speak presses deeper because you no longer have strength to pretend certain things are not affecting you. Heaven waited because now you are listening differently, even if you do not yet realize it fully. You have reached a breaking point that others around you do not see. They see your routine, your outward words, your continued effort, your ability to appear present. But I see what sits beneath all that. I see the quiet heaviness that comes when you are alone. I see how certain thoughts repeat when no one else is near. I see how questions return at night, how memories still rise unexpectedly, how disappointments you thought were settled still leave traces in your reactions. I see the invisible strain of carrying expectations, disappointments, and responsibilities while trying to remain composed before others. And because I see that breaking point clearly, I am not allowing you to continue without interruption. This is why I step in now. The breaking point is not your destruction. It is the place where what can no longer continue must finally answer to truth. It is the point where surviving is no longer enough, because surviving without inner change would only extend what I am now determined to transform. You thought perhaps you could continue a little longer in the same way. But I know the exact weight your spirit carries, and I know when hidden pressure becomes too great to ignore. This moment separates an old season from irreversible new movement. That is why it carries urgency. There are seasons where much remains uncertain because preparation is still unfinished. But there also comes a moment when unseen preparation reaches fullness and movement begins. Whether you feel fully ready or not, you are standing at such a threshold now. The old season was marked by waiting, by inner questions, by unfinished understanding, by carrying burdens that often felt repetitive. It was a season where much remained under restraint because certain inner structures still had to be exposed. The what begins now cannot remain only internal. Irreversible movement does not always begin loudly. Often it begins with one clear moment where truth enters and refuses to leave you unchanged. That is what this is. I am not merely comforting what hurts. I am marking separation between what has held you and what will no longer define you. Some thoughts that governed you cannot cross fully into what comes next. Some fears that shook your reactions cannot continue untouched. Some ways of interpreting delay, pain, and silence must end here because they belong to an older place in your journey that cannot govern what I am now releasing. Understand this carefully. Irreversible movement does not mean everything around you changes instantly. But it does mean the direction inside you begins shifting in a way that cannot return to what it was. Once truth reaches the heart deeply enough, even familiar patterns begin losing authority. What once seemed acceptable begins feeling too narrow. What once kept you numb begins feeling empty. What once allowed you to delay necessary surrender begins feeling heavy instead of safe. This is how new movement begins, first by changing what you can no longer comfortably remain inside. That is why I speak now with directness. I do not want you mistaking this moment for another emotional pause. I want you to recognize that heaven has marked this instant because what follows depends on how you receive what I am saying now. I am interrupting because I love you too deeply to let you drift across this threshold without understanding what is happening. You are not being abandoned to your own strength. You are being called into clear alignment. The old season taught endurance, but the next season requires clearer trust. The old season exposed weakness, but the next season demands that weakness no longer rule your response. The old season allowed silence to teach you where your heart still leaned. But now my voice enters because silence has said, enough. What stands before you is not random movement. It is the beginning of something heaven has already recognized even before you fully do. And because I know what begins here, I tell you again, this message could not be delayed any longer. My child, you have asked many times in the quiet places of your heart why I remained silent when your spirit was tired, when your prayers were repeated until words felt empty, when your strength became something you wore outwardly, while inwardly you wondered how much longer you could continue carrying what no one else fully understood. You asked me in moments when the room was quiet and your thoughts became louder than everything around you. You asked me after conversations that left you wounded, after nights that stretched longer than sleep, after mornings when you rose but did not feel renewed. You asked me why my voice did not come the way you expected, why my answer seemed delayed, why clarity did not arrive when confusion felt unbearable. And because I know every hidden question you never fully said aloud, I am answering now with truth you must receive deeply. My silence was never abandonment. I did not withdraw from you. I did not leave you standing alone while pain moved around you. I did not turn my face because your weakness became visible. I remained near in every unseen moment, even when my nearness did not sound like the answer you wanted at that exact time. There are seasons, and silence becomes part of my work. Not because I enjoy watching you wrestle, but because some things cannot be built in you while every discomfort is immediately removed. If I had spoken too quickly into every ache, some deeper truths would have remained hidden beneath temporary relief. If I had answered every moment the question formed, some structures inside you would never have been exposed enough for you to recognize what truly held your trust, and what only appeared strong while pressure had not yet tested it. Say, Jesus, I love you with all my heart. If your soul belongs entirely to Him, I saw your hidden pain long before others noticed even fragments of it. I saw how you carried disappointment in ordinary conversations without naming it. I saw how certain memories still returned when you least expected them. I saw how some words spoken over you stayed in your thoughts longer than they should have. I saw how you replayed moments, wondering if you should have spoken differently, trusted differently, waited differently, fought harder, released sooner, believed longer, or guarded yourself earlier. I saw how pain became quiet because speaking about it too often changed nothing around you. I saw the tears that came when no one was present, tears you did not even always understand, because sometimes they came not from one event, but from the weight of many things gathering together until your heart could no longer carry them silently. I counted every one of those tears. None of them disappeared without my knowing, none of them fell into emptiness. Even when you thought your sorrow had become too repetitive to matter, I remained fully aware of each hidden ache. Your pain did not become invisible because you learned how to hide it well. It did not become small because you stopped speaking of it openly. What others overlooked remained fully visible before me. My silence during those moments was preparation. Though preparation often feels painful when you are inside it, preparation does not always look like forward movement. Often it looks like waiting while deeper work happens where your own eyes cannot easily follow. There were things inside you that needed to surface fully before I spoke with the clarity you now receive. Certain fears were still hidden beneath confidence. Certain attachments still held more influence than you realized. Certain expectations still shaped how you interpreted my timing. Had I interrupted too early, you would have mistaken temporary relief for true strengthening. But I was preparing something deeper than relief. I was strengthening places in you that had long depended on outcomes, responses, approval, and visible confirmation. You thought you were simply enduring silence. But within that silence, many hidden foundations were being tested. What did you trust when visible reassurance did not come? What voice did you believe when immediate answers were absent? What remained inside you when familiar comforts failed to quiet the unrest? These questions were being answered even while you thought nothing was happening. Silence was also exposure, not exposure meant to shame you, but exposure necessary for truth. Many things only reveal themselves when external noise grows quiet. While you waited, you began seeing what thoughts returned most often. You saw where fear still entered quickly. You saw how deeply rejection still shaped certain reactions. You saw how quickly old disappointments influenced new expectations. You saw where your heart still leaned toward human understanding even while asking for divine direction. Silence exposed not only wounds, but also false securities. It showed you what you reached for when peace felt distant. It revealed what you called strength, but which was often self-protection. It uncovered how much energy had been spent maintaining appearances, while deeper trust remained fragile in places you had not fully acknowledged. Had noise continued uninterrupted, these things could have remained hidden under routine. But silence allowed them to rise where they could no longer stay unnoticed. I also observed carefully while you walked through unanswered prayers. You remember the prayers spoken repeatedly, the requests you believed were urgent. The moments you thought answers should arrive because the need felt immediate. You measured time through your own need, but I measured it through what was still unfolding around and within you. And an answered prayer did not mean unheard prayer. It did not mean neglected prayer. Every word reached me, every plea remained known. But some prayers required that surrounding conditions mature before visible answers could arrive without harming what they were meant to bless. You asked for relief while deeper alignment was still forming. You asked for change while certain internal patterns still needed recognition. You asked for open doors while some inner fears would have carried themselves through those doors unchanged if I had opened them too soon. So what looked like silence often contained precise restraint. Not refusal, restraint, not neglect, timing, not abandonment. Careful positioning. I saw emotional exhaustion grow in you. I saw the point where even simple decisions felt heavier because inwardly you were already carrying too much. I saw how exhaustion changed your thoughts. How tiredness made certain fears sound more believable. How prolonged waiting made hope harder to hold with the same ease you once had. I saw how you sometimes became quiet, not because peace had come, but because you no longer had words for what you were feeling. I saw the moments when you wondered if perhaps you were asking too much, expecting too much, hoping too much. Yet, even in emotional exhaustion, I did not step away. In fact, I was often closest when you felt least aware of me because weakness often strips away illusions and leaves the heart more open than strength ever could. I saw betrayal, too. I saw the words that disappointed you. The trust that did not receive the care it deserved. The people whose actions left questions behind. I saw rejection in forms others dismissed quickly, but which stayed in your heart longer than they understood. I saw private confusion after certain endings, after certain silences from others. After certain moments when what you expected from people failed you. I saw how those experiences quietly shaped the way you approached new situations, how they taught you caution, how they made you hesitate before fully opening again. You thought perhaps those moments belonged only to human relationships, but they also touched how you interpreted me. Sometimes, betrayal from others made my silence feel similar in your emotions, even though I was never wounding you the way others had. This is why silence lasted longer than you wished, because some wounds had to separate themselves clearly from my nature before you could hear me rightly again. Silence allowed false foundations to reveal themselves. This was necessary because anything false that remains hidden becomes dangerous when blessing increases. Some foundations looked stable only because pressure had not yet fully tested them. Certain parts of your confidence depended more on outcomes than truth. Certain expectations depended more on how quickly things changed than on trust in my wisdom. Certain areas of identity still leaned on how others responded to you. Silence exposed these foundations because, when visible support was removed, what remained became clearer. You began noticing where disappointment shook you more deeply than expected. You began seeing how much of your peace depended on external confirmation. This was not to condemn you, but to reveal what still needed strengthening. What looked like delay was spiritual positioning. I need you to understand that deeply because delay often feels empty when viewed only through human timing. But positioning is rarely obvious while it happens. While you thought nothing moved, I was moving pieces beyond what you could see. While you believed silence meant inactivity, unseen alignments were taking place within you, around you, and beyond you. Timing was being arranged with greater care than you could measure. Certain things had to move out of place before others could enter correctly. Certain relationships had to reveal their true strength or weakness. Certain thoughts had to lose authority before new instruction could settle deeply. Positioning often feels like standing still because outward movement is restrained while inward alignment takes priority. So when you look back on what felt like silence, do not name it abandonment. Name it preparation that cost you comfort but protected your future. Name it exposure that revealed what hidden peace had not yet reached. Name it observation by a God who watched every tear, every unanswered prayer, every hidden moment, every exhausted breath, every private confusion, every betrayal, every fear, every question, and still refused to abandon what he intends to complete. Where you survived in silence was not wasted. I positioned you for clearer movement now. And because that positioning is complete in ways you do not yet fully see, my voice comes now not as distant sound suddenly, but as truth arriving after silence has finished the work it was assigned to do. My child, there are places inside you that became hidden behind walls you never intended to build so high. You did not wake one day and decide to close parts of your heart completely. You did not choose coldness because you desired distance. You did not choose caution because you no longer wished to love, trust, hope, or believe. Those walls rose quietly, layer after layer, often without you noticing how high they had become. They were formed in moments when disappointment arrived repeatedly, when words you trusted lost their meaning, when promises from people weakened, when efforts were given but not understood, when tenderness met carelessness, when your spirit reached outward and returned carrying pain. Every difficult moment added another unseen stone. Every delayed answer added another quiet defense. Every wound that remained longer than expected taught you something about survival, and slowly, you learned how to protect what hurt by limiting what could touch it again. What began as self-protection slowly became structure. What began as caution slowly became habit. What began as temporary guarding slowly became the way you moved through life without realizing how deeply those walls had shaped your responses. I saw how self-protection entered your life. At first, it looked reasonable, even wise. You told yourself you were only being careful now, only learning from what had happened before, only refusing to repeat old pain. You stopped speaking certain thoughts aloud because previous honesty had been misunderstood. You stopped expecting too much because expectation had often ended in disappointment. You began measuring your words, limiting how deeply you allowed yourself to hope, reducing how openly you trusted what seemed uncertain. You called it maturity because survival often disguises itself as wisdom. But beneath the careful control, something else was happening. Parts of your heart that once moved freely began tightening whenever new possibilities appeared. Instead of receiving freely, you examined everything through memory. Instead of approaching new moments openly, you approached them with hidden calculations, asking inwardly how much this could hurt if it failed. You learned how to protect yourself so well that eventually even blessings approaching your life met invisible resistance because your spirit had become trained to brace before receiving. Distrust also built itself quietly inside you. Not always distrust toward everyone, and not always openly visible, but a subtle inward hesitation that followed experiences you never fully recovered from. You trusted words once and watched actions fail them. You believed certain people understood you and later discovered they only knew fragments. You leaned where you thought support would remain, only to find silence, distance, or misunderstanding waiting instead. Distrust did not arrive loudly. It entered as caution after enough moments taught you that not everything offered would remain steady. And though distrust began toward people, it slowly reached deeper places. Sometimes it touched how you interpreted life itself. Sometimes it touched how you waited for me. You did not openly say you distrusted me, but hidden beneath repeated disappointment, there were moments when your spirit quietly wondered whether expecting too much would only hurt again. So you learned to lower expectation before disappointment could reach full force. A hidden lowering became another wall. Numbness formed where pain stayed too long without visible resolution. There were moments when feeling deeply became exhausting. When caring fully seemed to cost more than you had strength to give. When hoping strongly felt dangerous because too many hopes remained suspended without visible fulfillment. So part of you became quieter, not because peace had fully arrived, but because emotional intensity had grown tiring. Numbness is not always the absence of feeling. Often, it is feeling pressed down because constant intensity becomes difficult to carry. You still moved through daily life. Still spoke, still responded, still fulfilled responsibilities. Yet inwardly, some places stopped reacting the way they once did. Joy did not enter as quickly. Excitement became cautious. Even relief sometimes felt temporary because your heart had learned not to fully settle into good moments too quickly. This numbness protected you from immediate emotional swings, but it also kept deeper healing from entering certain places because numbness often guards wounds by making them harder to touch. Type, I trust you completely, God, even when the way ahead is unclear. And hear this carefully. I am not exposing these walls to shame you. I am showing you what has been standing inside you because what protected you in a wounded season cannot govern you in the season I'm bringing you into now. There are inner defenses that were born from pain, but they have begun limiting peace. There are careful habits that helped you survive, but they have also restricted trust. There are guarded places that once kept you from collapsing, but now they keep you from receiving fully. This is why I am coming for the walls. Not to destroy you, to free you. I know every stone in them. I know the memory attached to each one. I know the disappointment that laid one piece down, the betrayal that set another in place, the delay that strengthened another layer, the fear that sealed the cracks between them. Nothing inside you is hidden from me, and nothing inside you is too deep for my hand to reach. You have lived beside these walls so long that parts of you began to call them normal. You began to move around them, explain them, adjust to them, and defend them. You began saying, "This is just how I am now," when the truth was, this is how pain taught you to survive. But survival is not the fullness I intended for you. I did not bring you this far only for you to remain protected but unhealed. I did not keep you through the darkest rooms only for your heart to stay locked from the light I am sending. I did not preserve you through disappointments so you could live the rest of your life expecting disappointment to return. I preserved you because I still have purpose for you. And purpose requires more than endurance. It requires openness. It requires trust. It requires a heart no longer governed by the memory of what hurt it. So now, I am placing my hand upon what you thought would stay untouched. The old fear, the private guardedness, the hidden suspicion, the silent expectation that something good will eventually be taken away. I am placing my hand there because those places cannot lead you forward. The next season cannot be carried by a heart that keeps bracing for the old pain. The next chapter cannot be entered fully while your spirit is still negotiating with yesterday's wounds. The next movement cannot flow freely while you remain loyal to defenses that once felt necessary but now stand in the way of healing. I am not asking you to deny what happened. I am not asking you to pretend the wounds were small. I am not asking you to call betrayal harmless or disappointment meaningless. I am asking you to let me touch what those experiences built inside you. Because the pain was real, but it was never meant to become your ruler. The disappointment was real, but it was never meant to become your prophecy. The silence was real, but it was never meant to convince you I had left. The delay was real, but it was never meant to define what you should expect from me. I am breaking the agreement between your future and your fear. I am breaking the hidden partnership between your hope and your past. I am breaking the habit of expecting less so it will hurt less if nothing changes. Because I am the God who saw you then, and I am the God speaking to you now, and what I speak now is this: the wall cannot remain, not because I do not understand why it was built. I understand more than anyone. The wall cannot remain because what I am releasing requires space in you. It requires room. It requires a heart that does not shut the door before blessing has even arrived. There are things I am preparing that will require you to receive without suspicion. There are instructions I will give that will require you to move without being paralyzed by old fear. There are doors that will open where you must not bring the old interpretation of rejection, delayed, and disappointment. You cannot step into new movement while still wearing the inner posture of the old season. This is why today feels weighty. This is why the words are pressing deeper. This is why something inside you knows this is not ordinary encouragement. Because I am not only comforting you, I am confronting what has been quietly governing you. And I am doing it with love. Deep love, steady love, holy love. The kind of love that refuses to leave you trapped in what pain built. So do not resist me when I touch the guarded place. Do not turn away when old emotion rises. Do not call it weakness when tears come. Sometimes tears are not proof that you are breaking apart. Sometimes tears are proof that what was frozen is finally beginning to thaw. Let the walls answer to my voice. Let the fear answer to my truth. Let the old expectation answer to my promise. Let the numb places answer to my presence. I am not outside your pain. I am standing within it with authority, and I am calling you forward, not backward. Not into the cycle that exhausted you, not into the old reasoning that kept you safe but small. Forward, into trust that breathes again. Into hope that no longer apologizes for existing. Into peace that does not depend on perfect circumstances before it settles your heart. Into a season where survival is no longer the highest testimony of your life. You will not understand everything at once. You will not feel every wall fall in one moment. You may still notice old reactions trying to rise. You may still feel the instinct to guard, to question, to brace, to lower expectation before hope has room to stand. But this time, you will recognize it differently. This time, when fear tries to dress itself as wisdom, you will hear my voice above it. This time, when disappointment tries to predict your future, you will remember that I did not bring you here to return you to the same prison. This time, when silence feels familiar, you will not call it abandonment. You will call it preparation. You will call it positioning. You will call it a place where I was working even when you could not trace my hand. My child, receive this deeply. The walls that rose from pain are beginning to lose their authority. The numbness that kept wounds untouched is beginning to open to healing. The distrust that entered quietly is being confronted by my faithfulness. The self-protection that once helped you survive is being replaced by discernment, wisdom, and peace. Not reckless openness, not foolish trust. Not denial of what happened, but healed openness. Clear trust, steady wisdom, a heart that can remember pain without being ruled by it. A heart that can move forward without dragging every old wound into every new door. A heart that can listen to me without assuming delay means denial. A heart that can receive what I send without bracing for loss before blessing even arrives. This is the work I am doing now, and this is why I would not let you miss this moment. Because today is not simply about hearing words. Today is about surrendering what has quietly held the inner rooms of your life for too long. So breathe, listen, let the truth settle. You are not being destroyed. You are being uncovered. You are not being punished. You are being healed. You are not being abandoned. You are being called out from behind the walls. And as you come forward, you will begin to understand something your pain tried to hide from you. You were never forgotten in the silence. You were never unseen in the waiting. You were never disqualified by the wounds you carried. I was there. I am here, and I will not leave what I have begun and finished. Carry this word with you. Let it settle in your heart. Let it speak louder than fear, louder than delay, louder than every old wound that tried to tell you nothing would change. And if this message reached you deeply, let your response be more than emotion. Let it become surrender. Let it become trust. Let it become the first step into the freedom I have already begun opening before you.